The mountains had taught Eli Granger how to live alone. They had taught him how to wake before the sun clawed its way over the jagged peaks, how to read the wind by the way pine needles whispered, how to smell snow 2 days before it fell. They had taught him silence, not the peaceful kind sung about in books, but the heavy, pressing quiet that sat on a man's chest at night and reminded him there was no one left to speak his name. Eli had not always been alone. Once laughter had echoed inside his cabin, and a woman's voice had softened the hard edges of his days. Once, now the mountains were all he had, and they seemed determined to keep him. That morning began like every other. The fire had burned low, leaving the cabin cold enough to sting his fingers as he pulled on his worn shirt and leather vest. His joints ached the way they always did in the early hours, a reminder of winter survived and wounds never fully healed. Eli stepped outside with his rifle resting in the crook of his arm, scanning the tree line out of habit rather than fear. The land was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seemed reluctant to break the stillness. He walked the perimeter of his cabin, boots crunching against frost-hardened dirt, checking traps and scanning for tracks. A mountain man who forgot routine didn't live long. He had just rounded the corner of the porch when something caught his eye, movement, where there should have been none. For a split second, his mind refused to understand what he was seeing. Then his breath left him in a sharp, painful rush. A woman was hanging from the roof beam of his porch. She hung upside down, her ankles bound tightly with rope, her body swaying slightly in the cold morning air. Long blonde hair spilled toward the ground like a pale waterfall, catching bits of dust and dried leaves as it brushed the earth. Her arms dangled limply, fingers trembling as if her body still fought to remain conscious. She was alive. That much Eli knew because her chest shuddered with shallow breaths and a faint, broken sound escaped her lips. Eli froze. In the mountains, danger often announced itself clearly, a bear's growl, the crack of a branch, the whistle of an arrow. This was different. This was wrong in a way that made his stomach twist. Someone had been on his land. Someone had used his home as a warning. He raised his rifle slowly, eyes scanning the tree line, the rocks, the shadows between the pines. Nothing. Whoever had done this was gone, leaving only their message behind. Eli stepped closer, boots careful, heart hammering so loud he feared it might draw predators. As he approached, the woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing pale blue eyes clouded with pain and fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "Please, don't leave me." Her words hit him harder than any bullet ever had. Eli lowered his rifle and moved quickly, reaching for the knife at his belt. The rope was rough and tightly knotted, meant to hurt, meant to hold. As he cut her free, her body dropped into his arms, light as a child's. She cried out weakly as blood rushed back into her legs, her fingers clutching the front of his vest like it was the only solid thing left in her world. "Easy," he murmured, the word unfamiliar on his tongue. He hadn't spoken out loud in days. "I've got you." He carried her inside, laying her gently near the fire, stoking the embers until warmth filled the room. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine resin, a scent that usually comforted him. Today, it only deepened the sense that something sacred had been violated. He fetched water, pressing the cup to her lips as she drank greedily, coughing and gasping. When she had recovered enough to speak, Eli noticed the state of her clothes, torn, dirt-stained, sleeves ripped at the seams. This was no accident. This was punishment. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to him, fear tightening her features. They said I deserved it," she whispered. "They said I chose wrong." Eli frowned. "Who are they?" She hesitated, then slowly pushed herself up, wincing as she shifted. Her blouse slipped slightly, revealing the skin of her shoulder and upper chest. Eli looked away out of instinct until he saw her flinch as if expecting pain. "Eli," she said softly, somehow knowing his name without him offering it. "You should see. You should know why they left me like that." Before he could stop her, she pulled the fabric aside. The words were burned into her skin. Not cut, not scratched. Burned deep enough that the flesh around the letters was scarred and angry. A permanent mark of cruelty. Eli felt his breath catch as his eyes traced the letters, his jaw tightening until it ached. Apache Lover. For a long moment, the cabin seemed to tilt. Eli had seen cruelty in his life, raids, lynchings, men beaten for less than rumor, but this was hatred branded into flesh. This was a sentence meant to follow her wherever she went. They said I lay with them, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks, that I betrayed my own people. But I didn't, I swear I didn't. Eli swallowed hard. He had heard stories like this before, whispers carried by traders and hunters. Women accused, punished not for what they had done, but for what others feared. Fear was a powerful thing. It turned men into monsters and excuses into weapons. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough. "My name is Clara," she said. I was passing through with my family, or what was left of it." Something twisted in Eli's chest. He knew that look, the look of someone who had lost everything and still didn't understand how the world could keep spinning. He had worn it himself once, long ago, when the mountains were new to him and grief was a fresh wound. "They took me from the camp," Clara continued, her words coming faster now, as if afraid to stop. "They accused me in front of everyone. My father didn't defend me, he just looked away. They said leaving me alive was mercy." Eli clenched his fists. Mercy. He had heard that word used to justify horrors before. "You're safe here," he said, surprising himself with how firmly he meant it. "No one comes up this far unless they're lost or desperate. And I don't let strangers stay long." She looked at him, eyes searching his face. "Then why am I still here?" Eli didn't have an answer. He only knew that leaving her outside, hanging from that beam, had never been an option. Some lines once crossed could not be uncrossed. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and gestured toward the fire. "Rest. You're not going anywhere until you can stand." As she leaned back, exhaustion finally pulling her under, Eli sat across from her, rifle resting against his knee. His eyes kept drifting to the door, to the beam outside where she had hung like a warning sign. Someone had wanted him to see her. Someone had wanted to test what kind of man still lived in these mountains. By nightfall, snow began to fall, soft and silent, blanketing the world as if trying to hide its sins. Eli fed the fire and listened to Clara's uneven breathing. He wondered how long it would be before the past came looking for her again, and what he would do when it did. Outside, the mountains stood watch, indifferent and eternal. Inside, two broken souls shared a fire, bound together by cruelty neither had chosen. And somewhere beyond the trees, the men who had burned those words into Clara's skin believed their message had been delivered. They were wrong.